Three hungry children shared one piece of bread. The cowboy who saw them couldn't walk away. The wind rolled across the Wyoming plains like a living thing that winter. It howled between empty buildings and rattled loose boards on the edge of town, carrying snow that stung a man's face like tiny needles. Most travelers avoided a place like Red Hollow once the first winter storms arrived. But Cole Turner wasn't most travelers. The tall cowboy rode slowly through the narrow street, hunched in his saddle, his long coat stiff with frost. His horse, a gray gelding named Dusty, moved with tired patience, each hoof crunching into snow that had already begun piling along the road. Red Hollow looked worse than Cole remembered. Half the storefront windows were boarded shut. The blacksmith shop sat silent, its chimney cold. Even the saloon doors barely moved in the wind. Hard winters had a way of thinning towns out. Cole pulled Dusty to a stop near the hitching rail outside the general store. A faded lantern swung above the door, creaking softly. He tied the reins and stepped down, his boots sinking deep into the snow. Inside the store, the air smelled of wood smoke and old flour. Behind the counter stood a thin man with gray whiskers and tired eyes. "Afternoon," the shopkeeper muttered. Cole nodded once. "Afternoon." The man studied him for a moment. "You passing through?" "Depends," Cole said quietly. "Any ranches around needing hands for the winter?" The shopkeeper gave a humorless chuckle. "Not this year." Cole leaned against the counter. "Bad season?" "Worst I've seen in 15 years. The shopkeeper gestured toward the window. Cattle prices dropped. Snow came early. Half the ranches sold off what they had left and moved south. Cole nodded slowly. Frontier towns could disappear in a single winter. He bought a small sack of jerky, a tin of coffee, and a loaf of bread. When he stepped back outside, the wind had grown stronger. Dusty snorted impatiently. Cole tucked the supplies into his saddlebag, then paused. Something caught his eye. Across the street, near the side of an old boarded-up building, three small shapes huddled close together against the wind. Children. Cole squinted through the falling snow. They couldn't have been more than 8 or 9 years old. Their clothes were little more than worn-out rags, stitched together from different fabrics. Thin coats hung loosely on their small frames, and their boots looked too big for their feet. The smallest child, a little girl with tangled blonde hair peeking from beneath a hood, sat between the other two. They weren't playing. They weren't talking much either, just sitting close together. Cole watched for a moment. Traveling cowboys learned early not to involve themselves in things that weren't their concern. People had their own troubles. But something about the scene held his attention. The oldest boy looked around cautiously before pulling something from inside his coat, a small wooden plate. Even from across the street, Cole could see what rested on it. A piece of bread, not a full slice, just a small, broken piece. The children leaned closer together as the wind swirled around them. Cole shifted his weight slightly, watching. The boy broke the piece in half, then paused. He studied the two smaller children. Finally, he broke it again. 3 uneven pieces. The smallest girl looked at the plate with wide eyes but didn't reach for it. The middle child, another girl, gently pushed one of the larger pieces toward the boy. "You take it," she said softly. Cole couldn't hear the words clearly, but he could see the motion. The boy shook his head. "Rose first," he insisted. The little girl took the smallest piece. The boy waited. The older girl broke her piece again and handed half to him. Only then did she eat the rest. Cole felt something tighten in his chest. 3 hungry children, sharing one piece of bread. The wind lifted the snow around them as they chewed slowly, trying to make the food last. Cole had seen hardship before. He had seen starving cattle, dying towns, and men sleeping in barns just to stay alive through winter. But this was different. These weren't grown men. They were children, and they were trying to survive the only way they knew how. Cole glanced down at the saddlebag beside him. The loaf of bread he had just bought sat inside. He could mount up, ride out before dark, and never think about it again. That's what most cowboys would do. Keep moving. Don't get involved. But his boots didn't move. Across the street, the smallest girl finished her piece of bread and brushed crumbs carefully from the wooden plate. She looked like she wished there had been more. Cole exhaled slowly. For a long moment he stood there, watching the three small figures huddled in the snow. Then he reached into his saddlebag, pulled out the loaf of bread, and started walking toward them. But as he crossed the street, something stopped him. The oldest boy had noticed him, and the way the child's eyes narrowed told Cole something important. Those children weren't just hungry. They were afraid of strangers, and whatever had happened to them had already taught them the world wasn't a kind place. Cole slowed his steps. He didn't want to scare them, but he also knew one thing now. After seeing what he had just seen, there was no way he could walk away, and he had no idea yet just how much trouble those three children were truly in. Cole Turner slowed his steps as he crossed the snow-covered street. The wind pushed flakes sideways through the empty town, and the sound of his boots crunching in the snow seemed louder than it should have been. The three children noticed him immediately. The oldest boy rose to his feet. He wasn't tall, maybe 9 years old, but the way he planted himself in front of the two girls made it clear he had already decided something important. He was the one who stood between danger and his sisters. Cole stopped a few paces away so he wouldn't crowd them. The boy's eyes were sharp and cautious. "You don't need to come closer," the boy said. His voice tried to sound steady, but it carried the thin edge of hunger and cold. Cole lifted both hands slightly, showing he meant no harm. "I ain't looking for trouble," he said calmly. The wind tugged at his coat as he crouched slowly, lowering himself to their level. The smallest girl peeked out from behind her sister's shoulder. Her cheeks were pale and wind-burned, and strands of blonde hair stuck to her face where melting snow had frozen again. Cole reached into the pocket of his coat. All three children stiffened. The boy's hands curled into fists, but instead of a weapon, Cole pulled out the loaf of bread, fresh, whole, still wrapped in paper. For a moment, none of the children moved. The little girl's eyes grew wide. Cole placed the loaf gently on the snow between them. "Bought too much," he said. The boy didn't step forward. "Why?" he asked. Cole gave a small shrug. "Figured you might make better use of it than me." The children exchanged uncertain glances. The middle girl whispered something to the boy. Cole couldn't hear it. Finally, the boy stepped forward and picked up the bread. He held it carefully, almost like it might disappear if he squeezed too tight. Then he did something that made Cole's chest tighten again. The boy immediately broke the loaf in half. He handed the larger half to the two girls. "Here," he said quietly. The little girl, Rose, Cole would later learn, stared at the bread like it was treasure. The middle sister broke off a piece and gave it to her first. Only after Rose began eating did the others take bites. They ate slowly, like they were trying to make the moment last. Cole watched them for a while. Children didn't usually show that kind of patience with food unless they had gone hungry for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. "What are your names?" The boy hesitated, but the middle girl answered. "I'm Lily," she said softly. She gestured to the boy. "That's Samuel." Then she wrapped an arm around the smallest child. "And this is Rose." Rose looked up at Cole with cautious curiosity, crumbs clinging to her lips. Cole nodded. "Well, nice to meet you three." Samuel still watched him carefully. "You passing through?" the boy asked. "Boy was planning to," Cole said. Samuel nodded slightly, as if that was the answer he expected. Cole studied them more closely now. Their coats were patched so many times the original fabric was hard to see. Their boots didn't match, and all three children had the same look about them. The look of someone who had been fending for themselves far too long. "Where's your folks?" Cole asked gently. The question changed the air immediately. Samuel's jaw tightened. Lily looked down at the bread in her hands. Rose stopped chewing. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lily said quietly, "Papa died last spring." Cole lowered his head slightly. "Railroad accident?" Samuel added. The boy said the words like he had repeated them many times. "Train slipped off the track. They said it was quick." Cole swallowed. Railroad work was dangerous. Everyone knew that. "And your ma?" Cole asked. Lily hesitated again. "She's sick." Samuel quickly added, "She'll be all right." But the boy didn't sound certain. Cole studied their faces. "Where is she?" The children all looked toward the boarded building behind them. Samuel turned halfway. "Inside." Cole frowned. "That place ain't heated." "We made a fire," Lily said quickly. Samuel nodded. "Just small ones. We're careful." Cole looked at the broken boards over the windows. Snow had piled against the door, no chimney smoke. Nothing. A slow unease crept into his chest. "How long's she been sick?" he asked. Samuel didn't answer right away. Finally he muttered, "Couple weeks." Lily corrected him quietly. "Almost a month." Cole felt the wind cut sharper against his neck. A month. No proper shelter. 3 children trying to care for a sick mother. He looked back at the loaf of bread already half gone. "How have you been getting food?" he asked. Samuel shrugged. "Sometimes folks give scraps." "Sometimes we work," Lily added. "What kind of work?" Cole asked. Samuel gestured toward the livery stable down the street. "Shoveling snow, carrying wood." Cole nodded slowly, but something still didn't add up. Even the poorest towns usually had a church or nabothing. A slow unease crept into his chest. "How long's she been sick?" he asked. Samuel didn't answer right away. Finally he muttered, "Couple weeks." Lily corrected him quietly. "Almost a month." Cole felt the wind cut sharper against his neck. A month. No proper shelter. 3 children trying to care for a sick mother. He looked back at the loaf of bread already half gone. "How have you been getting food?" he asked. Samuel shrugged. "Sometimes folks give scraps. Sometimes we work," Lily added. "What kind of work?" Cole asked. Samuel gestured toward the livery stable down the street. "Shoveling snow. Carrying wood." Cole nodded slowly. But something still didn't add up. Even the poorest towns usually had a church or neighbors willing to help a sick widow. "Why ain't someone helping your ma?" he asked. Samuel's face darkened. "They tried." "Tried?" Cole said. Lily's voice dropped to almost a whisper. "The doctor came once." Cole leaned forward slightly. "And?" Lily swallowed. "He said she couldn't finish. Samuel did it for her. He said she probably wouldn't make it through winter." The wind howled down the street, rattling the loose boards of the empty building behind them. Cole stared at the door. "Where is she now?" he asked quietly. Samuel looked straight at him. "Inside." The boy's voice had changed. It carried a quiet fear now. "We left her sleeping when we came out for food." Cole slowly stood. The snow was falling harder now. The sky above Red Hollow had turned the heavy gray color that meant another storm was rolling in. "How long's she been alone?" Cole asked. Lily looked at the ground. "Most of the afternoon." Cole turned toward the boarded door. Something deep in his gut told him this situation was worse than the children understood. Much worse. He took a few steps toward the building. Behind him, Samuel called out quickly, "Wait!" Cole turned back. The boy looked nervous now. "You don't have to go in there," Samuel said. Cole studied the 3 small faces. Cold, hungry, trying to be brave. He gave a quiet sigh. "Son," he said gently, "if your ma's been sick that long." He looked at the dark doorway. "Someone ought to check on her." Samuel didn't argue. But as Cole reached for the door, Lily suddenly spoke again. "Mister." Cole glanced back. Her eyes were wide with worry. "She hasn't woken up today." The wind fell silent for a moment, and something heavy settled in Cole Turner's chest, because deep down, he already knew what he might find inside. Cole Turner pushed against the warped wooden door. It groaned as it opened, snow falling from the frame in small clumps. A bitter draft rushed out from inside the building, colder than the wind outside. The air carried the stale smell of damp wood and old smoke. Cole stepped inside slowly. Behind him, the 3 children lingered near the doorway, unsure whether they should follow. The interior of the abandoned structure was little more than a single large room. Broken furniture sat in dusty piles along the walls, and one of the windows had been patched with old cloth and scrap boards. Near the center of the room, a small fire pit had been built from stones. The ashes inside were gray and nearly cold. A thin blanket hung from a rope in one corner, creating a makeshift divider. Cole's eyes moved toward it. "That where she is?" he asked quietly. Samuel nodded. Cole approached carefully. Each step made the wooden floor creak beneath his boots. The blanket moved slightly in the draft. For a moment, Cole hesitated. He had seen sickness before. Trail drives, mining camps, frontier towns. Illness could sweep through a place like wildfire. But something about the stillness behind that curtain made his chest tighten. Slowly, he pulled the blanket aside. The woman lying on the narrow cot looked far older than she probably was. Her dark hair was damp with sweat, clinging to her pale face. A thin blanket covered her shoulders, but it did little to hide how weak she had become. Her breathing was shallow, slow, but it was there. Cole let out a quiet breath. Alive. Behind him, Lily's small voice trembled. "Is she?" "She's breathing," Cole said gently. The three children rushed forward. Rose climbed onto the side of the cot, pressing her tiny hand against her mother's arm. "Mama," she whispered. The woman didn't move. Samuel stood stiff beside the bed. "She's been sleeping a lot," he said. Cole crouched down beside the cot. He placed the back of his hand against the woman's forehead. Hot. Far too hot. Fever. He had seen it plenty of times before. Pneumonia, or something close to it. Without a doctor, it could take a person quick. Cole glanced around the room again. A cracked bucket. An empty tin cup. A small sack with only a handful of flour left. These children had been trying to keep their mother alive with almost nothing. He stood slowly. "How long since you drank water?" he asked. Lily thought for a moment. "Yesterday morning." Cole frowned. "She needs water now." Samuel grabbed the tin cup immediately. "I'll get some. There's a pump behind the stable," Lily added. Before Cole could say anything more, the boy had already run out the door into the blowing snow. Cole knelt again beside the woman. Rose was gently stroking her mother's arm. "She'll wake up soon," the little girl said with quiet certainty. Cole hoped she was right, but the fever worried him. A lot. Lily stood nearby, watching Cole closely. "You know about sickness?" she asked. Cole hesitated. "Enough to know your ma needs a doctor." The girl's shoulders sank slightly. "The doctor already came." "Once," Samuel had said earlier. Cole looked at her. "What happened after that?" Lily stared at the floor. "He said medicine costs money." Cole didn't need to hear the rest. The town had likely decided the widow wasn't worth the expense. Frontier towns could be kind. But when winter came, people looked after their own first. A sudden gust of wind rattled the building again. Rose shivered. Cole removed his coat and draped it gently over the little girl's shoulders. "Better keep warm," he said. She gave him a small smile. Moments later, Samuel burst back through the door carrying the tin cup. His cheeks were red from the cold. Cole helped him kneel beside the bed. Carefully, he lifted the woman's head and held the cup to her lips. At first, nothing happened. Then a small swallow. Another. The children watched with hopeful eyes. "See?" Rose said softly. "She's waking up." But Cole wasn't so sure. The woman's breathing was still too shallow, and the fever still burned against his skin. He stood slowly. "Samuel," he said. "Yes, sir." "Where's that doctor live?" Samuel pointed toward the far end of town. "2 streets over. White house with a green roof." Cole nodded. "I'm going to talk to him." Samuel looked uncertain. "He said he wouldn't come back." Cole met the boy's eyes. "We'll see about that." He turned toward the door. But before he could step outside, Lily spoke again. "Mister?" Cole looked back. "What is it?" The girl hesitated. Then she asked quietly, "Why are you helping us?" Cole didn't answer right away. It was a fair question. Cowboys pass through towns like this every day. Most would have kept riding. But something about those 3 children sitting in the snow with that single piece of bread. It had stirred something he hadn't felt in years. He shrugged slightly. Sometimes folks just need a hand. Samuel watched him closely. You don't even know us. Cole gave a faint half-smile. Don't have to. He stepped out into the storm. Snow had begun falling heavier now, the sky darkening as evening approached. Cole pulled his hat lower against the wind and started down the street toward the doctor's house. The town looked even quieter now. Most people had already retreated indoors to escape the cold. Lights flickered in a few windows, but no one walked the streets. Cole reached the small white house Samuel had described and knocked firmly on the door. A moment later, a middle-aged man with tired eyes opened it. Yes? You the doctor? Cole asked. I am. Cole stepped forward. There's a woman dying in that abandoned building down the street. The doctor sighed heavily. I've already been there. She's worse now. The doctor folded his arms. I told those children the truth. Without proper medicine and warmth, there isn't much I can do. Cole's jaw tightened. You ain't even going to try? The doctor looked at him sharply. You new in town? Passing through. Then you don't understand something. The doctor stepped onto the porch. Winter's barely started. Supplies are limited. I have patients who can actually survive. Cole stared at him. So you're leaving her to die? The doctor didn't answer, but the silence said enough. Cole felt anger rising in his chest. He had seen hard men before. But this was something colder. He stepped closer. What's her name? Cole asked. The doctor frowned. Anna Whitaker. The name struck Cole like a sudden gust of wind. Anna Whitaker. Cole blinked slowly. Whitaker? He repeated. Yes. Her husband's name wasn't... Cole's voice trailed off, but the doctor finished the sentence. Thomas Whitaker. For a moment the storm seemed to disappear. Cole Turner stood frozen on that porch. Because Thomas Whitaker was a name he had not heard in years, and the moment he heard it, a memory came rushing back. A collapsing bridge, a runaway wagon, and a man who had once risked his life to pull Cole Turner out of certain death. Cole looked back toward the abandoned building down the street, where 3 hungry children sat beside their dying mother. Thomas Whitaker's children. The wind howled louder around the town, and in that moment, Cole Turner realized something that changed everything. Walking away was no longer an option, because the man who once saved his life had left behind a family with no one left to save them. The wind roared across Red Hollow like a warning from the mountains. Cole Turner stepped down from the doctor's porch, the name Thomas Whitaker echoing through his mind louder than the storm. Thomas Whitaker, a man Cole had not seen in nearly 10 years, but a man he had never forgotten. For a moment, Cole stood in the snow, staring down the street toward the abandoned building where the children waited. 3 small figures in a broken town, Whitaker's children. Cole rubbed a hand across his beard. He could see the memory as clear as if it had happened yesterday. A cattle drive along the Snake River. Spring floods had swollen the water higher than anyone expected. One wagon had slipped near the crossing, the horses panicking, the wheels snapping against the rocks. Cole had been thrown into the river. The current had dragged him under before he could even grab hold of something. He remembered the cold, the water filling his lungs, the world turning dark. And then, a rope. Someone had jumped in after him. Thomas Whitaker. The man had nearly drowned, pulling Cole back to the riverbank. Cole had tried to thank him afterward. Whitaker had only laughed and said something simple. Next time someone needs help, you do the same. Cole looked down at the snow-covered street now. Well, he muttered quietly. Looks like that time came. Behind him, the doctor cleared his throat. You still standing there? The man asked impatiently. Cole turned slowly. You got medicine for fever? The doctor frowned. Of course I do. Then grab it. The doctor shook his head. You're not listening. Medicine alone won't... Cole stepped closer. And warmth? He interrupted. What? You got blankets? Coal? Something to heat that building? The doctor stared at him. That place is barely standing. Answer the question. The doctor hesitated. Yes, but... Good, Cole said firmly. You're coming with me. The doctor's expression hardened. I told you already. I can't waste. Cole stepped forward again, his voice dropping low and steady. That woman's husband once pulled me out of a river when I was already half dead. The doctor said nothing. Cole's eyes held his. So here's the way I see it. The cowboy's voice was calm now, but it carried a weight that made the doctor listen. I owe that man a life. The wind rattled the porch railing. And right now, Cole continued, his wife's still breathing. The doctor looked toward the storm-dark sky. Snow was falling thicker now, the kind that could bury a town overnight. Finally, he sighed. You stubborn fool, he muttered. Then he turned back inside. Give me a moment. Cole exhaled slowly. When the doctor returned, he carried a leather medical bag and 2 thick wool blankets. Let's hope we're not too late, the doctor said. The 2 men walked quickly through the snow. By the time they reached the abandoned building, the wind had grown fierce enough to push them sideways. Inside, the children jumped to their feet the moment Cole entered. Did you bring him? Lily asked anxiously. Cole stepped aside. The doctor walked in behind him. Yes, he said gently, kneeling beside the cot. Rose clapped her hands softly. I told you Mama would wake up. The doctor began checking Anna Whitaker carefully. Cole watched from the corner of the room. Samuel stood beside him. The boy's voice was quiet. You knew our pa? Cole looked down at him. Once. Samuel's eyes widened slightly. What was he like? Cole thought about it. Brave, he said simply. The doctor suddenly spoke. She's very weak. The children froze. But, he continued carefully, she's still fighting. Lily's hands clasped tightly together. Can you help her? The doctor opened his bag. I'm going to try. He mixed medicine into a small spoon and carefully helped Anna swallow. Then he wrapped her in the wool blankets. We need to raise her body heat, he said. Cole immediately moved toward the fire pit. Samuel, he said, help me gather wood. There's some outside, the boy replied quickly. The 2 of them hurried into the storm. The wind nearly knocked them over as they gathered broken boards and scraps of wood from behind the building. By the time they returned inside, snow covered their shoulders. Cole rebuilt the fire carefully. Soon flames flickered against the stone ring. Warmth slowly began to spread through the cold room. Rose crawled beside the fire, holding her hands out toward it. Feels nice, she whispered. The doctor remained beside Anna, checking her breathing. Minutes passed, then an hour. Outside, the storm grew stronger. The wind howled through cracks in the walls, but inside the small room, the fire burned steady. Cole leaned against the wall, exhaustion creeping into his bones. Samuel sat beside him. You're not leaving, are you? The boy asked quietly. Cole looked at him. Not tonight, Samuel nodded. That answer seemed to mean more to him than Cole expected. Across the room, Lily sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand. Please wake up, she whispered. The doctor suddenly leaned forward. Wait. Everyone looked up. Anna Whitaker stirred slightly. Her lips moved. Lily gasped. Mama? Anna's eyes fluttered weakly. For a moment they opened. Just barely. Her voice was fragile. Children. I'm here, Lily said quickly. Rose ran to the bed. Samuel stood frozen. The doctor smiled faintly. That's good, he said. Very good. But then the woman's breathing suddenly grew shallow again. The doctor's expression changed. Cole saw it immediately. What is it? He asked. The doctor stood slowly. The fever is still rising. Lily's hope faltered. Is she going to be okay? The doctor hesitated. Cole stepped closer. Tell us straight. The doctor looked at the fire, then at the storm rattling the walls. She's stronger than I expected. A pause. But the night will decide. The words fell heavily in the room. Rose clung to her sister's arm. Samuel stared at the floor. Cole moved toward the door. Where are you going? Samuel asked. Cole grabbed his hat. To make sure that fire doesn't die. Outside, The blizzard had turned violent. The wind roared across Red Hollow like a living beast. Cole stepped into the storm, searching for more wood to keep the fire alive, because inside that broken building, one fragile life was hanging by a thread, and 3 children were waiting to see if their mother would still be there when morning came. The storm did not ease through the night. It howled across Red Hollow like a wild animal that refused to sleep. Snow piled against the abandoned building, sealing cracks in the walls and covering the street outside in a thick white blanket. But inside that fragile shelter, the fire Cole Turner fought to keep alive burned steadily. Every time the flames began to weaken, Cole stepped back into the storm to gather more wood. Broken boards, fence rails, anything that would burn. The cold bit through his gloves and coat, but he barely noticed. Each time he returned, the children looked up from their places near the bed, their faces lit by the flickering firelight, waiting, hoping, praying. The doctor stayed beside Anna Whitaker through the long hours. He checked her pulse, wiped the sweat from her brow, fed her small spoonfuls of water whenever she could swallow. And all the while the fever raged. Sometime deep in the night, Rose finally fell asleep, curled beside Lily, her small hand still clutching the edge of the blanket that covered their mother. Samuel tried to stay awake. He sat beside Cole near the fire, staring into the flames with tired eyes. "You should sleep some," Cole told him quietly. Samuel shook his head. "What if she wakes up?" "I'll tell you." The boy hesitated, then finally leaned back against the wall. Within minutes, exhaustion carried him away. Cole remained awake. He had spent half his life on cattle drives where sleep came in short pieces and danger never rested long. Tonight felt no different, except this time. The lives he was guarding were much smaller. Toward the darkest hour before dawn, the doctor stepped away from the bed. Cole looked up immediately. "How is she?" The doctor rubbed his tired eyes. "The fever's breaking." Cole straightened. "You sure?" The doctor nodded slowly. "It's coming down." Across the room, Lily lifted her head. "You mean she's getting better?" The doctor gave a small smile. "Yes." For a moment the room was silent. Then Lily burst into tears. Not the quiet kind she had been holding back all night. These were the tears of a child who had been strong for far too long. Rose woke up at the sound. "Mama?" she asked sleepily. Lily grabbed her and held her tight. "She's going to be okay," Lily whispered. Samuel stirred awake. "What's happening?" Cole placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Your ma's winning the fight." Samuel blinked once, then twice, and suddenly the weight he had been carrying fell away. He laughed, not loudly, but with a kind of relief that filled the whole room. The doctor returned to the bed and checked Anna again. "She'll need rest," he said, "and warmth." Cole looked at the fire. "That I can handle." The storm finally began to weaken as morning crept across the plains. Gray light filtered through the patched window boards. Outside, Red Hollow lay buried beneath deep snow. Inside the small room, the fire crackled warmly. Anna Whitaker slept peacefully now, her breathing stronger than it had been in weeks. The children sat quietly nearby, just watching, just making sure she was still there. After a while, Samuel turned toward Cole. "Why did you stay?" the boy asked. Cole leaned back against the wall. "Your pa once told me something." Samuel's eyes brightened. "You really knew him?" Cole nodded. "Your father pulled me out of a river when I was sure I was done for." Samuel stared at him. "What did he say?" Cole smiled faintly at the memory. "He said if I ever saw someone who needed help, I should do the same." Samuel looked toward the bed where his mother rested, then back at Cole. "Guess he was right." Cole chuckled softly. "Your pa usually was." A few hours later, the storm had passed. People slowly stepped out of their homes to dig paths through the snow. News traveled quickly in small towns. By midday, several neighbors had arrived at the abandoned building carrying food, blankets, and wood. Word had spread that the Whitaker children had made it through the storm, and that their mother was still alive. The doctor returned with more medicine. "You'll need proper shelter now," he said. A rancher named Mr. Keller spoke up. "The old bunkhouse on my place is empty this winter. You're welcome to stay there until spring." Lily's eyes widened. "Really?" The rancher nodded kindly. "And the children can help around the ranch once things thaw." Anna Whitaker, now awake but weak, managed a grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered. Cole stood near the doorway, watching quietly. Samuel approached him. "Are you leaving now?" the boy asked. Cole glanced toward the open prairie beyond town. For most of his life, that had always been the answer. Ride on. Keep moving. Don't stay long enough for roots to grow. But something about the warmth of that little room and the sound of those children laughing again made the open road feel different. Samuel waited. Cole scratched his beard thoughtfully. "Well," he said slowly, "Mr. Keller's ranch might need an extra pair of hands." Samuel's face lit up. "You mean you're staying?" Cole tipped his hat slightly. "For a while." Rose ran over and hugged his leg before he could protest. "You saved Mama," she said proudly. Cole laughed awkwardly. "Your Mama did the hard part." Across the room, Anna Whitaker looked at him with quiet understanding. "You saved my children," she said softly. Cole shook his head. "I was just paying a debt." But as he stepped outside into the fresh winter sunlight, Cole Turner realized something he hadn't expected. For the first time in many years, he wasn't just passing through a town. He had finally found a place where staying mattered. And sometimes it only took one small piece of bread, shared by 3 hungry children, to remind a wandering cowboy where he truly belonged.